Hello everyone, I'm Joshua Myers, and today we're going to be reviewing Poltergeist 3 from 1988.
The ultimate skyscraper is having some problems.
Well, we'll get those problems before they get us, right?
With its heating. With its elevators. With its pool. Don't be alarmed. There's a logical explanation. Poltergeist 3. Rated PG-13.
Poltergeist 3 stars Tom Skerritt, Nancy Ellen, Heather O'Rourke, Zelda Rubinstein, and is directed by Gary A. Sherman. Poltergeist 3 is about basically the finale of the Poltergeist trilogy that was started by Steven Spielberg. Although it says it was directed by Tobe Hooper, but we'll get to that on another video. And centers around Henry Kane and his fellow Poltergeist cult, or whatever the hell it is, trying to get Carol Ann so that she could lead them to light. And this is meant to be the finale of the series. And that is basically the plot of Poltergeist 3. What did I like about it? Honestly, Heather O'Rourke as Carol Ann is honestly pretty good in this, actually. Her acting ability has increased in this film, and she's a talented little actress in this. In fact, I think she mainly carries the story. I also did like Zelda Rubinstein as Tangenina, actually. The psychic from the first two movies, she was still really good in it. I think the idea of the whole high-rise setting and everything could have been interesting and done right. And other than that, that's really all the positives there is to it. So what did I not like about it? Oh boy. Now, here's the thing. I understand that this film went major production issues, actually. It seemed very rushed, too. Like, were on a tight deadline for this movie. They shot the film in 18 weeks. And before post-production began, Heather O'Rourke actually passed away. Yeah, she was very sick at the time. They couldn't really find out what... They couldn't really, diagnose her illness. They originally misdiagnosed her illness as Crohn's disease. And she passed away and before the movie was done, and you could kind of tell that, especially at the end. It seemed like they had to reuse some dialogue from earlier scenes in that and kind of fit them to the climax. When Carol Ann does come back from the light, when Carol Ann does come back from the other side, you really don't see her face or anything. They just use a body double. And another problem is I felt like it seemed to have, mainly one person mainly had one person having a lot of control over the project, which for sometimes may be good. I mean, look at me. I have control of a lot of things with my productions. In fact, with most of my films, I edit them, I direct them, I star in them, I even do the camera work, I also do the music, and I have, up until this point, have been writing the stories for my films. And they turn out either from decent to really good. So it is possible for somebody to be like that and actually turn out either a decent product or a really good product. But that's not what we got here. I just feel like the director just didn't know how to handle each and every single of those aspects. Because not only he was directing the film, he also wrote the film. He also did the visual effects for the film. I bet he also edited the film. So yeah, he did a lot of stuff, like I just felt like there should have been at least more people involved, kind of helping him along. And because of that, the film massively suffers for it. And in fact, it had so much production trouble that even the studio did at once consider not releasing the film. Just canning it all together. But they were like, no, we're doing this in honor of Heather. As a last memory to her. And I give them props for that, that's actually a really nice thing. But at the same time, too, it's The final product of this movie, though, was not good at all. Except for maybe Carol Ann, except for maybe Heather O'Rourke as Carol Ann, and the psychic woman that you see in the other two films. They all did really good. It's just that the problem is that it's just not a good story. It's not, like, an interesting one at that. And when it, like, for a while, it, like, one of the worst things about this movie is the pacing. Me and Amanda watched this today for the first time, and we felt like by the 30-minute mark, we've been there for hours, which may be good for some things, like if it's a really well-crafted story, a really good universe, you like the characters, and you just want to be there as long as you can. But in this case, it was unbearable. And all the new characters they bring in, like, they don't bring any of the old characters except aside from Carol Ann and the psychic from the previous two movies, but other than that, they don't bring up the other actors. I'm not sure why that is. I'm not sure if that was like scheduling issues, like they couldn't get some of them because they were working on other projects, or if some of them were sick at the time. I have no idea. But yeah, I think it really suffers for that. And honestly, that would have not been a big deal if these characters were interesting and they were really good characters. They were not interesting. In fact, a lot of them, I really wanted to punch in the fucking face, or just wanted to tear my, like, eardrums out. Some of these characters were so fucking obnoxious. And this was a movie me and Amanda felt like it was unbearable to sit through. Like, seriously, we kept on checking the time as far as when it was going to end. And it just felt like it kept on going on and on, almost to the point where it felt like it was non-stop. And another problem is, it is boring. There's not much of the, like, crazy poltergeist shit happening. And when they do show it, it's not that good. Like, we were let down by it. Like, we were not impressed by it at all. And knowing that, even the score isn't that memorable. Like, the musical score. Like, I even remember the musical score for the first film. Like, for example, Carol Ann's theme, like, da 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 da. Like, that's memorable. Like, that, I may try to get the soundtrack to the original Poltergeist. In fact, now that I think about it, I may try to get the soundtrack to the original Poltergeist. But, yeah, it's... And knowing that, like, the first two films, even though the second one I thought was weird compared to the first one, like, first of all, I felt the second one was a decent follow-up, and knowing that the first two films I felt like were more timeless than this movie. Like, this movie feels dated. Like, you could definitely tell it was a movie that came out in the 80s, especially the late 80s. And this movie came out in 1988, and it really feels like that. And the weirder thing is, that is the same year that Howling 4 came out in theaters. And I think that's a better movie than this, and a more timeless movie than this, mind you. And knowing that, me and Amanda were talking about, like, what we could have like, if she and I were to work together on this movie. Like, I directed, she wrote it, and even with all the production issues, how could we potentially salvage this movie and actually make it good? And there were some things in here in this movie that we think we could have salvaged to make it good. Like, for example, the high-rise setting. Even though it was different, we still think it could have been interesting. Especially with all the mirror stuff. We get where they were trying to go with it. And yeah, like, just, honestly, the biggest problem with this movie was execution. It was not executed well. And I feel like you could take some of these ideas and make them really good, and have it be an interesting movie. But they don't. And on a side note, another disappointing thing was Reverend Henry Kane. Even though he was a weird addition in the second movie, he was interesting and creepy too. And they took his character and made him one of the most uninteresting antagonists I've seen. And that's really a shame. I think they could have done so much with that character as an antagonist. And in fact, at one point, after Poltergeist 3 was released, they were thinking about doing a prequel focusing on Henry Kane and his followers and what really happened before they died. I kind of want to see that movie now. I do. So I'm going to give Poltergeist 3 a 1 out of 5 stars. It's a really bad movie. And honestly, I feel sorry to say that because, it's really sad that was Heifer LaRue's last movie. And that she died at such a young age, too. I think she was 12 when this one came out, and that's really upsetting, but at the same time, too, it's even if you were to look at it in that angle, it's still a shitty movie. So that's it for this review. Thank you guys for watching, and see you next time.